Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I connect successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Michelle Baumberger, the CEO of a law firm redefining the way that businesses use legal counsel through an innovative business model, and Katie Cronkite, who founded a technical writing agency after asking herself, why not grow a business? So if either of those episodes sound interesting to you, please make sure to go and check them out on your favorite podcast app. Today's episode is brought to you by Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is dedicated to providing financial clarity and profit maximizing solutions to small businesses. The team at Clara CFO are seasoned accounting professionals with a heart for small business. We help growth-minded entrepreneurs thrive through fractional CFO services and financial education. To learn more about Clara CFO Group and how we can help your business, visit claracfo.com. Or feel free to email me directly at hannah@claracfo.com. So I actually first met today's guest through our mutual participation in the EO Accelerator program. EO stands for Entrepreneur Organization. If you've been listening to the podcast, you've probably heard me say that before, talk about this organization. But EO Accelerator is a fantastic program that helps businesses grow from $250K in annual revenue up to the million mark and beyond. To learn more about the EO Accelerator program, you can go to eonetwork.org/EO-accelerator. Today's guest is Vanessa Laughlin. Vanessa is the founder of Banister Advisors. The company offers a case management approach for individuals and families facing health crises at all ages, complex elder care, end of life, bereavement, and complex estate settlement, delivered by a compassionate team of multidisciplinary experts. Vanessa holds an MBA from the University of Washington and a BA in economics from Tufts University, and was also honored in 2019 by the Puget Sound Business Journal as a 40 under 40 finalist. Vanessa, thank you so much for being on the Financial Clarity podcast.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I have always been very interested about your business because I've never met anybody ever who does what you do. So, the bio kind of briefly touched on it, but can you tell the audience a little bit more about what Banister Advisors does for clients?
Absolutely. Well, the simplest way to talk about it is to do a little teaser with people when I'm introducing what we do, because it is different. And so I just straight out of the gate say, we are a unique type of client services provider. So, you know how you call an attorney if you're having a legal problem, or you might call a CPA or an accountant for a tax issue or question. Well, our team, we're the professionals that you call when you're going through any type of overwhelming situation, or even what you might think of as a crisis. And so really we don't want to get too personal, too upfront, but the reality is we sometimes ask people, imagine the worst day you've ever had, the hardest time, either in that day or the day after, or maybe it was the day before and you thought you might need some support going into it. Who did you call? And people usually say, my friends, my family, my mom, right? A special aunt, let's say. But at the end of the day, it does kind of come back to our us and ourselves to DIY these crises. And so again, now having a professional option to come in and help get people through.
That is really interesting. I'm imagining in my head all the different scenarios that people are going through. Do you find that sometimes it is because people don't have the family to rely on, or they don't have, maybe a professional in their life, if it's a therapist or if it's a, potentially even like I guess like you would have doctors, but like, is it because
Yeah.
people don't have that naturally built into their social structure, or is it something else that they're going to Banister for?
That's a really great question. It's kind of an all of the above situation. So somebody might, let's say, be a physician, or they might, their sister might be a surgeon, right? And so in certain situations, they're going to be able to call a friend, call a family member, right? Get on the phone and get the resources, the information, the issue spotting, the plan, how to, choosing between two different options and understanding the trade-offs, things like that. But even if have got, a doctor in the family and a lawyer in the family and, and like an expert, other kind of expert, let's say in the family for the particular situation, at the end of the day, it's still your family, right? And
Mm,
so having a neutral third party come in and help you just from the very start have some sense of stability, some sense of we're going to get through this because other families like us have as well. Or sometimes it's individuals, but we really usually work with families and groups. And in those situations, I think sometimes the goal isn't necessarily, fixing the problem. It's understanding the problem or problems to solve, getting at least everybody on the same page with what the goals are. And at the end of the day, just trying to minimize future regret, right?
mm,
Because, you mentioned in the introduction and kind of helped explain how we truly work across the lifespan. And there's situations like end of life situations, whether that's sadly a miscarriage, let's say, or difficulty getting, pregnant in the first place. So a fertility journey, but all the way through life to, maybe the last chapter, somebody's made it into their 90s or past 100 and it's time for that last chapter to come to a close. There's no fixing end of life or death, right? That's a
mm.
reality. But you have to ask yourselves in those days and weeks leading up to and afterward, for the survivors of a loss, for example, how can we be a team of support in that scenario that helps people look back and say, you know what? It was going to happen the way it was going to happen, but we were also able to do certain things, take action, make decisions, and even come to accept as a group of family friends what the situation was. And to be able to, in those moments, look back and say, we did the best we could at the time with the resources and information we had. That's a gift, right? That we have the privilege of showing up in these situations and helping people achieve.
Mm. That is huge, and I imagine too, it's got to feel like when you're going through that, having somebody who has walked in those steps before or somebody who kind of knows, what's next, what's the next thing we need to be paying attention to, what do we need to be aware of, like just, oh, if we do go through a crisis, I'm sure for most of us that would be the first time we go through a crisis. So the fact that you guys have trained professionals that have walked through many of these situations, that's such a value add right there. Just to, you know, know what to do, what's the next step.
Yeah.
That's really great. So how did you get into this field?
So, probably like many of the listeners of this podcast, being an serial entrepreneur, this is my third business,
Okay.
and also playing, frankly, a leadership role in different, you know, companies that I worked for where I wasn't the entrepreneur, of all different sizes, and then really kind of in my own community and my family. I'm one of those people that when the crisis happens, the intensity comes in and the record sort of stops and goes screeches. Who does everybody look at, right? And for a while, it had just started kind of, especially in my 30s, I had just started to become that person in the friend group, that person in my family. And sadly, within our family, we went through a series of back to back to back crises and losses and difficult times. And I felt like my 30s, which is also when I was, was then married and was at then point starting a family, it just felt like it just was like a T-bone, right? Just driving along, and all of a sudden, just life just hits you so hard. And through those experiences, at the time, I was also working as a management consultant, so another type of client services. And
Okay.
really, the insight ultimately came when I wanted to be able to, I'm going to date myself here, like go open up the phone book, right, the yellow pages, and flip to who knows what section, and just find somebody or a team of people that I could call in, right? And say, hey, I need help. I need to tap out. I'm at the center of this, crisis, and I would love some help, as opposed to sort of being the one rowing the lifeboat is an
Right.
expression we use, right? So all that to say, it was in particular the really, really sad circumstances of my late father-in-law's death that really also brought it home of, in the depths of my grief, and my husband's, his father, and my sister-in-law, her father, and my mother-in-law with her husband after 18 plus months of very intense cancer treatment and ultimately succumbing to complications from cancer. And it happened very quickly. So Jay Banister Laughlin is my father-in-law, passed away in 2016. And the name Banister Advisors comes from the experience, and it's absolutely in honor of Jay.
Mm,
So we mean it when we say, we help families like yours, right? When we're talking to clients so that they kind of feel like they've found the right place if it's the right fit. But really, truly, it's also families like ours. So everybody who comes to Bannister has their own J or multiples and the stories of why they do what they do and why we've all come together as a team to build and to grow what we're growing.
mm. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Beautiful and heartbreaking, but like it out of that situation, you've built something really wonderful. So I commend you for that. And I think it kind of is that story of, businesses are often born out of necessity and, and where you see a gap in, what we'd like to see in the world. So I think that's really awesome. Now thinking about the business, who do you hire? Like who works for you? Who are these people that are, able to come in? Because it's not just you, you have a team. What do you look for in employees and people who are working at Bannister?
That is a great and always evolving question. And so, earlier you mentioned the multidisciplinary team.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are truly a multidisciplinary team, meaning that the type of calls that we get from that very first initial conversation to explore, is this a match? Like for what you need? Can we maybe help you? Right from that first call, we have to have a team of individuals who are ready to rise to the occasion. And one of the things we also say internally is we don't shy away from the hard stuff at Bannister. So having people who, just from a sheer work experience, from an education and even a credentialing standpoint, licensure, we're looking for people who have typically degrees, master's level degree in social work or an equivalent field. We're also looking for people with clinical backgrounds, people who have worked in hospitals or clinics, anybody who's familiar with diagnosing and treating and supporting individuals and families through, you name it. It could be an oncology focus, it could be substance use, it could be interpersonal violence support, it could be women's health, it could be a lot of pediatric specialties, geriatric specialty. And then lastly, we look for people who don't just have that education and don't just have those, sort of on the front line experience, but people who also really were born to do this kind of work. So
Mm-hmm.
they're often also the people in their workplaces and families and communities and friend groups who, again, when that record stops, who does everybody look to? Right. And so we kind of find people who say, I've been doing this for free my whole life, right? I've been doing this. I can't believe I get paid for this, right? And it is beautiful to help find those people because for us, we're also trying to really expand the limits of how different and what is the sort of, lived experience and perspectives and, identities that people bring with them, even languages, right? And culture, because that turns out can really matter to have a cultural competence. But then
Absolutely.
within that, the patterns that we find is people who, are being compensated well for this work compared to, let's say, what for example, social worker, that's a pretty common field that we draw from, or psychotherapy. They're kind of used to not making top dollar, and we're paying them more what attorneys make because that's where the value is. And it just blows their mind, right?
Yeah.
That they could do the work they love to do and also get the compensation that frankly they absolutely deserve.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think those fields are extremely underpaid by the traditional roles that they
Yeah.
might have, especially social workers. Oh my gosh. Um,
Somebody once mentioned, they said, I think you're doing a bit of organizational role arbitrage, meaning finding these individuals who are effectively underpaid in their fields, coming, bringing them in, helping them make that transition, and then truly out in the market, helping them realize through Banister as well the value that they deliver. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is I love this because you found the people. Oh, real quick question on, well, maybe it's not a quick question. On finding those people, are you doing any kind of personality tests, or how are you gauging how are you gauging that they have the skills? Because it kind of sounds like you're hiring people that were like you in some ways, of being that person, that go to,
Mhm.
person to call in a crisis. So have you found any kind of personality thread that is the same between people, or some kind of skill set or something that you're looking for?
Yeah, there's definitely a few. I'll mention those, but then it also kind of comes down to our process of how
Hmm.
we grow the team, because at the end of the day, you can screen and evaluate and hire, and it just doesn't play out to be the right fit, and generally on both sides, right? So somebody's saying this is not what I actually signed up for either, and the team is like, this maybe isn't the best fit. So initially, we are looking for things that are, to your point, kind of more personality based, right? So we're looking for people that, for example, I think this is they have the, what's the, oh, I'm blanking on it, the mindset, like the not a fixed mindset, but a growth
Oh, growth
mindset.
mindset.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
took me a while to get there. So we look for people with that growth mindset. In fact, we kind of look for people who, for lack of a better word, have that fire or defiance almost, where if something is hard or something is disappointing or something is confusing or challenging, it almost gives them fuel to figure it out. And they get a lot of satisfaction from solving a problem, especially when it's on behalf of one of our clients, because your heart cannot help but go out to the people who call us and engage us. So somebody who's going to get, not overboard, not, as we would say in behavioral health, enmeshment. It's not going to sort of go too far, but there has to be a bit of a, wow, I came into work today and I started my day, and I, at the end of the day, can point to three people or three families whose lives are better because of some solution I was able to determine for them, or some opportunity or some trade-off I was able to help them kind of, decide on and break through and just get unstuck, right? So if
Mhm.
people don't get that, like, burst of sort of, yeah, energy, if they're not like fist pumping from the work we do, then it's not the right job, because that's part of the sort of non-monetary compensation of the role. So those are a couple of the things that we look for. And then at the end of the day too, we start everybody out in a certain entry level position within the client facing team. And there's ultimately four levels, ending in a leadership role and kind of management role within the organization. And we really kind of like bigger companies that have proven it works. At Nordstrom, for example, everybody starts out on the floor and you have to have floor experience. And so we have people coming in who are going to be learning and moving up, meaning that if they never sort of graduate from that first entry level position, that's okay. So we're not overcommitting on either side for a fit that's just not going to be there. And I would say within like 2 to 3 months, it's pretty clear. So we usually start off people. Our practice is to start off people in a contractor function kind of role, and really just say on both sides, let's reevaluate this, because if it's not a fit for Bannister and for the rest of the organization, it's not going to be a fit for them either. And so it's an easier conversation to have. It's almost like we're engaged, but not like the wedding hasn't happened. And so it makes it a little bit easier to, frankly, sometimes take a risk on people that maybe the fit isn't obvious right away, but just enough there. But that we've learned over time that that's, especially with creating a new type of business and a new type of professional function, we don't try to predict the future too much. We have a way to try it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, I like that. Uh, I Yeah, I think the people is probably such a huge part about providing the service, that, having a process in place and understanding how people can really get a good feel for what you're doing, and also having that quick bless and release if it's not if it's not working out.
Absolutely. Exactly. It's a little bit like finding out the friends, let's say, that you would travel with, but the friends who you would only do like a short weekend versus around the world trip versus we can travel together, but we shouldn't like be roommates. We shouldn't live
Right.
together, right? And so there's a way to sort of like build up to that. And then, um, just it allows for the reality, right? Of what I thought I was signing up for was not what I ended up signing up for, and vice versa. So,
That happens often, especially
yeah,
in
and
a
I think,
unique business.
yeah,
In a unique business that it doesn't have a very, proven, clear, this is exactly like how it is. Everybody knows. Like, for example, everybody knows how an accounting firm, anybody who's in accounting kind of knows how an accounting firm runs. Now, culture is different,
sure,
company to company, but you're probably going to be doing tax returns or you're going to be doing bookkeeping or whatever it is at an entry level. Like for a business like yours, there's not a lot of businesses like yours. So I can imagine, especially professionals who've had like maybe quite a breadth of experience in
yeah,
their profession coming into something like yours, it's like would be, different. And for some people, it's going to
different.
be super satisfying. And then some people are going to go, oh, this is not what I thought. And um,
It's just not what they expected. I will tell you one quick thing though to just wrap this part up because I think it's interesting. We have noticed that quite a few of the people who do end up working out really well. And again, I talked about that growth mindset and that sort of personality where like failure challenge almost fuels you, right? Makes you want to like go even harder and that satisfaction when you figure it out or crack the code on something. People who have experience working in fine dining and people like as a server or even in the kitchen and people who have experience with event production, like large events, being on the sort of tech crew team, there's something about this like there's the user experience, right? Meaning the people, at the event or the people in the restaurant enjoying the dining experience. And this sense of the show must go on. So it doesn't matter if there's a kitchen fire. It doesn't matter if, you've run out of the pasta. It doesn't matter if, half of the speakers have blown out. You have to make it work. And that kind of like using that energy that might, again, otherwise make people be like, I give up or like, I can't do this. I can't work in these conditions. And so it's kind of people who are like, oh no, I was born to work in kind of like not necessarily chaos, but people who see chaos and crisis as an opportunity to get to stabilization, not a I'm looking at that and I want to run the other way. You kind of have
yeah,
to want to, like firefighters want to run into the fire as opposed to
right.
away. We look for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, really important point, because not everybody's built the same way in crisis. And so,
No.
uh, okay, I love that. Okay, so tell me about how the service is delivered then. And I also would want to know because I'm imagining, well, from what I know about your business, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, is
Sure. Yeah.
you can sell to direct families that
Mhm.
need some help or an individual or somebody that needs some help. But
Yeah.
also, there's a business component of this where businesses might engage Banister to be a support for their employees. So, can you tell us a little bit about who you're serving really directly and what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take us a little back in the Wayback Machine, time machine, though, to frame this up. So, March 2020, I'm sure you remember where you were when, especially in the Northwest, it was that first week of March when everything shut down.
Oh,
Okay, I'm
I
going to go back.
remember
I'm
because
going to go
not
back because
only
I had a little freeze.
oh, yeah, okay.
So, I'm just going to say, I'm sure you remember where you were in March 2020 in that first week when up here in the Northwest, everything shut down. So, do you remember where you were? I'm curious now.
Yeah, I definitely do because not only was I moving into a new house, I also filed for divorce right at the
Woo,
beginning of March of 2020. Probably could have
just
used your services.
Just for fun. Yes, we do help people. Divorce navigation is absolutely a multi-splendored thing, right? Lots of different kinds of support needed for that major but important life transition.
Yes.
So Bannister, we were 18 months old. We were a baby business, right? And I'm talking from LLC formation, meaning the LLC was formed in July of 2018, but it wasn't really even until early 2019, January, that we even had brought on 3 new people within a few months. And so we're really going to kind of a growth phase. And then the pandemic happened and everything kind of went right. And I remember this feeling of, like you're flying a plane, you're trying to get up to different altitudes, right? You've taken off, you're in the air. And then all of a sudden it's like, did we lose an engine? Are we going down? It was like everything just froze, right? And some people ask us, like, oh my gosh, you must have had so much business, at the start of the pandemic. And we said, yes and no, meaning the pandemic absolutely did accelerate our business. It moved forward parts of our strategy that we thought weren't even possible that early on. However, in the initial kind of 6 to 8 weeks, it was just crickets. It was everything that was in process kind of froze
Right.
to a certain degree, and everything that was kind of about to be like kind of landed also just stopped. But by June of 2020, we responded to inquiries from April and May of 2020 from large organizations who reached out and said, hey, we heard about what you do. It was usually HR leaders were the ones who found us early on. Do you think you could you do that for our team? Because we have these things called EAPs in place, or employee assistance plan. And all of a sudden, 10 times as many employees need that support. And so it's a little bit like airlines. They have to overbook the flight, knowing that not everybody's going to show up. And if everybody shows up for a flight, then you're getting a text or an email saying, hey, do you want to sell your seat, right, for a voucher? So EAPs, these employee assistance plans that we're providing, let's say counseling support, 3 different counseling sessions, or, an online directory to different resources. What they were finding is that they were completely oversubscribed, right? Everybody was calling them at once. And so what that did is it really kind of forced a lot of these leaders and all the people teams, right, human resources, to say, where else can we find support for our employees who are really struggling? So by June, we had signed, or were shortly on our way to sign, the first 2 of our employer clients. We call them benefactors because they're providing the benefit to the employees. And it's a wonderful model, because to be able to do what we do, and then, invoicing isn't fun for anybody, right? But if you're invoicing somebody that's also going through a crisis, sometimes it doesn't feel great,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
However, if you can invoice their company when they are going through a crisis, then it actually feels really good. And then the company, again, this is all very private, so they never know. The way our contracts are set up, they're never going to know even that we were helping an individual
Oh,
unless that individual discloses, right? So we
interesting.
describe it as a situation, but we have a set package of hours, typically between 8 and 12, depending on the contract. We have a term budget. One company, I will say notably, also the first one we ever signed with, they have no term budget. They're just saying, if our individuals need, a $2,000 to $3,000 package to meet their needs, we got this. We got this. And if they have more than one situation happen in a year, contract year, that's fine. And as many people need help, need it. Other companies, we work with them to predict and establish a budget. If they go over it in a year, we've never had a situation where there hasn't been a term budget extension and then a matching increase year over year. And as you can probably imagine, from a service provider standpoint, we're pretty sticky benefit, meaning that
Yeah.
once we get in, I wouldn't say it's always, just like a slam dunk renewal cycle. There's definitely conversations, but we've continued to see budgets go up, and we have 100% renewals because what we offer can't really get it anywhere else. And it's
Yeah.
huge return on investment.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Like I imagine there's probably so much of a value for employers because they don't want to lose key employees, or they don't want to have somebody, maybe a parent dies and somebody has to deal with like their entire estate or something. Like that could become a full-time job very quickly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like giving some support that actually keeps that individual like from, I mean, maybe not quitting, or even just like
Sometimes, yeah.
actually.
Sometimes it's not uncommon, particularly for women in the workforce, right?
Yes.
If they're already right up at their limit, and particularly women in leadership, you see this as well. They're just like they're holding it all together, right? But then one thing flips and they're just like, I'm out. The math simply doesn't work with the hours in the day, right? There's only so many hours you can take away from sleeping and meeting your basic needs.
Right.
So, we find that for a range of, you know, different kinds of people and their function in the company and their function in a family, we find often the leaders in a company are also, again, the leaders in their family and community. And when they're, let's say, they're survivors of a spousal loss, or their child is having, a teenager and adolescent mental health crisis, or God forbid, a younger child is going through, cancer treatment, or has had an accident or some type of issue, there's any number of things, including the person, let's say, having, a flare of chronic MS, right? So there's all sorts of things that can occur. And then it kind of snowballs, and it goes from being hard to overwhelming to impossible really quickly. And so, we know, again, I talked about that return on investment. It's not just people leaving, that's huge. It's not just people taking leave and maybe extended leave. But you know what's worse? People staying on the job and struggling. And, some of the organizations we work with, they are working on mission critical functions,
Right.
right? So having somebody who, let's say, is on the legal team when your company is going through active litigation, or somebody who, is a scientist in a biotech company, and they're part of the regulatory process, they're trying to get FDA approval, and all of their milestones and their funding is tied to that. Or, maybe there's a rocket scientist and they're literally working on a launch into space. And, from the standpoint of not just the quality, but we've actually found that the first people that came to us from companies looking for the kind of support we provide, they were thinking about it from a, how do we take care of our employees, right? We have a duty as part of our culture. We really see ourselves in that role. If they're in trouble, we're going to show up for them. That's still true from a values standpoint. We've now started to notice in these renewal cycles also a seat at the table, so to speak, risk management, quality teams, like from a
Yeah.
healthcare standpoint. So they're really starting to see, like, oh, sure, from a heart standpoint, absolutely, we want to be there for our people in these times. But from a bottom line standpoint, like, this makes a whole lot of sense. And since because of the way our rates are set up and the size of our packages, we're talking between a, let's say, $2,400 to $5,000 investment for the stability and resolution and support that we can provide during these really, really rare but high impact times. It is, again, that sells us and renews us every single time.
Right. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
an easy yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that too. I think it's really great that you don't have to be doing the sales process for the person going through the actual issue. And so, I mean, I imagine that we have some people that are listening that might be thinking like, "Hey, I have this amazing service, but maybe there's a different buyer." Maybe
Yes.
the person buying is actually different than maybe who I've been selling to in the past. So, I like this. I like your business model because I feel like it's a little different than maybe some traditional, just like straight B2B services or even B2C services. So I like it. That's another reason why I wanted to have you on today.
Thank
So
you.
let's talk a little bit about like the actual structure of the business and maybe talk
Sure.
about,
Yeah. I
um,
would love to nerd out about that. I
yes,
love
let's
that stuff.
talk. Let's talk
Like,
about
let's unroll the blueprints.
all right. So tell me what do you pay attention to in the business when it comes to metrics,
Yeah.
KPIs?
The number one metric that we are laser focused on is really similar to what you would see in a law firm, right? Or a creative agency, let's say. We're really trying to understand what is that billable hour driver. Because since we don't have users, we're not an app that can just scale up and scale down. We're really trying to focus on not only the volume of billable hours a month versus non-billable internal investment work, right? Just to keep the lights on, innovation, all that kind of stuff. But really, that what is an activity that brings in the money, right? Directly or indirectly. And once you understand that as a driver, it's actually a really good, you know, KPI to rally not just a team around, but individuals. And understanding that it isn't all about, burning yourself out at the start of the month, but both for our team, because again, this is difficult. This is difficult work, right? This isn't something where you can pull an all-nighter and, like, no, you have to be sustainable. So that pacing both from the experience of our team that's doing support across many different clients at a time. And we call them client engagements. So you might have X number of engagements per, team member that they're working on. You might also have multiple team members on one engagement, both client facing and kind of support behind the scenes. But we're really, really interested too, from the standpoint of for each individual engagement, what does we call it the arc of the engagement look like from the first kind of initial kickoff and discovery into, we actually use sort of, don't laugh, we talk about our navigators, right? And our guides. We actually often use like a flight analogy. So like taking off is like kickoff, and then getting kind of, cruising altitude is just going along. And then when do we land the plane, right? Like when is the right time to wrap up the engagement? Have we delivered on the goals? Have the goals shifted or changed fundamentally? How can we empower our clients to kind of take it from there, and or the professional teams that maybe we've kind of built for them to kind of, again, rely on down the road. And so all of that arc is really comes down to, I would say, our number one KPI is that not just the volume, but the pacing and the arcs across a monthly cycle of billable hours.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Do you typically pay people by the hour too? Is
We
that
do.
the structure?
Yep.
Okay, got
That's the structure. And it's a base salary, just like when most consulting firms, law firms, I'm assuming maybe financial services firms as well, or accounting, or, maybe, your company as well. But we like it because it means that people can rely on a base level of salary and benefits, but also if they work more, they make more.
yeah.
And having worked in my original first job out of business school, corporate world, if I could be coming in every single Saturday and working late and my paycheck never changed.
Oh yeah.
Going into consulting, it kind of felt like, hey, if I'm gonna really I'm really gonna like bring it on home, make it work for the client, like then maybe the next week I'm gonna take a little time off because I've just kind of paid for my own time off through really hard work, a few weeks prior.
Mm.
So really like from the equity standpoint, I think that ends up benefiting a lot of people, me, who might have, gone that extra mile on a salary while other people were clocking out. And now it's kind of like, no, you work hard, you make more, and then you hopefully rest and recharge to catch up for it.
Yeah. Is there anything you wish you had invested in sooner in your business?
Ooh, um, I don't think we have enough time. That could just have been like one question. Oh my gosh, the hindsight, right? Of
Yes.
things I would have done differently. Talk about, we help our clients minimize regret, right?
Right.
We sometimes joke we give them access to the time machine. I wish I could use the time machine to go back.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why I
I
asked the
would,
question. What would you
yeah.
go back and tell younger Vanessa?
I think that there were particular times in the growth of our business where I truly felt stretched in like 18 different ways, right? Where I truly had those moments where like I can't be in a sales call and troubleshooting like a technology issue with, how one system in a workflow is like connecting to another, while also, being there. Let's say one of my colleagues comes out of a really, really tough meeting, and then my job is to support her so that she can support our clients, and trying to sort of be all those places at once. And so I think investing in some of the more back of house support and expertise, people who really, really have more of a tried and true general management in a client services organization, and really finding the right people, bringing them on board, and compensating them well, and getting them engaged in a way that is really, they see it as part of themselves. I thought earlier, like I had the, the incorrect impression that I maybe could kind of stretch myself. And at the end of the day, not only is the answer nope, but the quality isn't there as well. So I think, people will often say like, oh, you have to like let go. You have to let go of the aspects of the business that, are, pulling you in different directions. And I would say after you find the right people
Yeah.
to let it go to, because definitely there were some, I will say, kind of fits and starts to get to the point, to get the right people doing the right work. because there's nothing worse than letting go of something and thinking, great, I delegated, right? I'm helping the organization grow, and then regret that decision.
Yes.
So it's a two-parter. It's a two-part piece of advice.
Oh, yes. Yeah. If we could pick those right people from the start, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, hindsight
It's
is
hard. Yeah. Well, I
it is
mean,
2020. Yeah.
we're doing so much growing our firms. We've grown where we kind of started in our EOA journey around the same time and growing the
Yeah.
business.
Yep.
So I think we have to wear a lot of hats when we're at the size that we've been at for the past few years. And then now it's the time to figure out what is the next thing to offload, and how to do that well is a huge skill. It takes practice and probably a few falling on our face experiences before we get it right. But I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you, but before I ask it, I want to make sure to point people to your website in case anybody does, want to know more about how you guys serve clients, or if you're an employer actually looking for this, or if you just know people that are going to need the service. It is banisteradvisors.com. So people can go and check that out. So the last question I have for you is that the question is, do you have a mentor in your life? And if so, or, a mentor in life or in business. And if so, what is a piece of advice that stuck with you from that mentor?
Gosh. Well, again, this could be entirely own podcast topic for another episode, but the answer is yes. And not only do I have one mentor, I have many. And I think of them as my informal board, not just formal-ish, but not just for business and Bannister, but these are the same people that I went to when I was trying to figure out, is it the right time to take the jump and leave, the sort of steady job in 2018 and go off and really try to forge a new path with this company I didn't even know the name of when I left consulting, right? So it's the same group of people that all along have been there in support of me and my family and my business before it was even had a name, before it was even officially formed. So I would say collectively, I would say there's some definite patterns of the type of advice I've gotten from these different mentors. And a lot of them really come back to own and believe your own voice.
Mm,
So they really come back to, there's going to be a lot of times where people are going to tell you to go one way or another. People are going to tell you that they know better about you and your business. And even if you look back and say, oh gosh, I wish I'd done something differently, that really be okay with that and just sort of say, I followed my voice and I learned, and it has influenced maybe the way my sort of voice or inner wisdom is evolving, but that you really can lose yourself if you lose perspective on that, right? Again, that voice and that kind of inner sort of guide for where you should go. They said, just don't lose touch with that.
mm,
Yeah.
that's good. That's a good reminder. I think we all need to hear that sometimes.
Oh
So,
yeah. I just every single day. It's probably a good reminder
yes.
for when there might be creeping a little bit of doubt, or somebody very confidently telling you that, oh no, you should trust them. They know better. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Well, Vanessa, besides the website, how else can people get in touch with you?
We love folks to follow us on LinkedIn. So our LinkedIn page is Banister Advisors as well. And really, we all end with it's a little bit of a dark humor, but I'm sure you can understand in our line of work. I probably should have mentioned having a dark sense of humor. Sense of humor and a dark sense of humor is actually pretty important for the team as well, right? It's one of the ways we cope on the hard days, um, especially hard days. Is I hope you never need to call us, but if you do, visit our website, find us via LinkedIn. We make it really easy to get in touch and schedule time. And on your hardest day, it would be our privilege to show up and be part of the team that helps you get through it all.
Mm, love it. Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for being on Financial Clarity.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.